Welcome back. We're glad you're here for Table Talk and Tumbleweeds. This is the fourth week in Lent. We're still continuing to talk about Lent, Lord of the Rings. And so if you have the chance, please like, comment, subscribe just below the video. And we'll continue reading on from this one through the texts, which are Journey to the Crossroads through to Minas Tirith, so the very first chapter of the third volume.
Right, so in this, Frodo and Sam and Gollum have been sort of released by Faramir, and they are trudging their way into Mordor through the Deadlands, and we talked about that.
A little bit. But this is where things really come to a head.
Yeah, because they're just about to cross in, and they're climbing up, and what we discover is that Gollum has set a trap.
Yes.
Hoping that Shelob, the giant spider, will kill and eat Frodo, and that she doesn't want the ring, and so
he can get whatever's left, and she's not
he'll
interested
pick
in those
through
things.
whatever to get the ring. And so the big theme that I really noticed this week as I was reading this is just the sense of just weight as you're reading this, right? There's a weariness.
Yeah.
They're trudging. They're weary. Their feet are heavy. The darkness is they can't tell the difference between day and night because it's so dark. And there's just this incredible growing weight.
Frodo even says it's like the ring is getting heavier as we get closer and closer to Mordor.
Yes. So for all of them, there is this, and Gollum's always complaining about being hungry, and there's really this impending sense of weariness and doom, which I think is not really our focus this week. And I think that we actually struggled quite a bit. This was probably the week that we
changed it a whole month.
We changed it a whole month, but we talked a little bit about loyalty because certainly that is the defining characteristic of Sam. At one point, we thought about the idea of integrity. Yeah. Integrity understood as people being having a sort of a center, right? Integrity as opposed to people who are fragmented. Yeah. And so that's a difference between Sam and Gollum, right?
Yeah, because Gollum has those two things always fighting for dominance within him.
He certainly lacks integrity in that sense, whereas Sam is very, very single-minded, and that gives him a certain amount of integrity. But that kind of led to a real conversation between the two of us that I had a lot of trouble letting go with, which is, what is the difference between Gollum and Sam? Yeah. Right? They're both, and there's an enormous amount of similarities between them.
Yeah. Outside of that integral spot, they do a lot of similar things. They both follow Frodo.
Right.
They both are bound to Frodo and bound to this journey that they're on. There's a whole lot of different things that they do that's like, do you think they recognize each other?
Yeah.
And so at least one of the terms you've used is it's like a mirror. Right?
A mirror, yeah.
Do you think if they hold it up, will they see each other or will they see themselves? And
there's this crucial similarity between them that sort of emerges. It only emerges at the end of this reading, which is at one point they both become bearers of the ring.
Yeah.
Right now, of course, Smeagol has been a bearer of the ring. Sam makes the choice to pick up the ring and take it when he believes Frodo has died, yeah. So he has to go on. So he picks up the ring and he takes it and he puts the ring on, that one of his choices. And so there is that sort of there is that connection between them. But certainly, as you sort of highlighted, I think the biggest thing is their relationship to Frodo. They are, it's a love triangle, right? And they both are oriented towards Frodo, right? Yes. They both love Frodo.
In some fashion or another.
Yes.
And part of it is that Gollum loves Frodo because of what he has.
I'm going to push back on that, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay.
Sam loves Frodo because of who he is.
Yeah, well, it depends on Sam loves Frodo because that's who Sam is.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because he's kind of and loyalty and you see that in this story. That's not my nature. I don't know what I was thinking. It's not my nature.
Why was that? Why on earth?
Yeah. So, but and we'll get back to this idea of loving, but they both call Frodo master.
They do. They both do. Very, very much so. Although, again, I'm wondering how much of that is transference. That Gollum is not necessarily saying master because he loves Frodo, but because he loves the ring, and the ring is the one that master holds.
But see, and this is where I think we have to start distinguishing between Gollum and Smeagol.
Yes.
Right? Gollum only loves the ring.
Yes.
Gollum wants the ring. Gollum and the ring are just, that's the only thing he can think about. Smeagol, there is this other side of Gollum, right? And Smeagol, I think, clearly loves Frodo, clearly responds to Frodo.
And part of that is that mercy we've talked about previously. This is the one who could have and didn't.
Yes.
So there is definitely that response of Smeagol to say, no, he's been good to us.
Yes.
He was kind to us. He
Us,
gives
us.
us. But he does this over and over again where he's like, no, this is the person that we should be following. This is the person we should be loving, in contrast with the one that we have been following and been forced to love out of fear.
And I think one of the things that you can see is because Gollum is divided,
Yes.
right? And because Sam is not,
Yeah.
at least not until maybe a little bit later. But you know that the devotion, the love, the affection, the servitude that that Smeagol feels towards Frodo actually makes him more unintegral. I have to think of what the opposite of integrity is.
More fragmented.
More fragmented, right? And there's this, there's I mean, in some sense, Sam serves out of love. Gollum, not Smeagol, serves out of desire,
Yes.
right? That he desires the ring, and so everything for Gollum is transactional, right? Yes, we will do this because then we will get this. Yes, we will. Yes, so there's this whole yes, I'll lead you, but then you will do this. Yes, I will agree to this, but then you will do this.
Everything is that single-minded, if something slips up, I get the ring.
Right.
He believes he's the inheritor of this ring if something happens to Frodo, and so
Well,
we
he
can
wants
do
to
this,
make. He's going to make sure that he's the inheritor. Of
we're
the
not
ring.
there yet, but yes, he wants to make
Yes.
sure of this.
Yeah, so you kind of and the closer you get, the more you can see this, and I think this is where, I think one of the things that was interesting to me, the more I thought about this relationship, between Sam and Gollum, and I think in the next video we're going to talk a little bit about what Tolkien had to say about that, but that Sam in some sense is almost one-dimensional. Tolkien would disagree with me.
Yeah.
But I think there's a sense in which, when you look at this relationship between the two of them, it's really interesting, mostly because Gollum is such a deliciously complex character.
He is
right?
the interesting one. In Sam, there's not a whole lot there. But this is also the case with a lot of these things. So I know that it's been long discredited and we ignore it for a lot of things, but Joseph Campbell talks about hero with a thousand faces.
Yep.
And that makes all the heroes the same. And Sam, Tolkien will argue, is the hero of this text.
Yes, yeah.
And so he has to fit a certain mold, he has to do certain things, he has to behave in certain ways, and that makes him boring.
I mean, in defense of Joseph Campbell, he wasn't as much sort of discredited as problematized.
Yes.
And so Campbell's problem was universalism. Everyone has the same structure that we do.
And he looked very, very narrowly.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is that we do have that structure.
We do,
right?
and
we do.
This fits within that structure very much.
And so and because Tolkien was utilizing Western myths, and I don't mean modern Western, but the Western cultural myths instead of looking at, say, the Bhagavad Gita.
Absolutely. So
you
discredited was the wrong word.
Yes.
But
it's too harsh a word.
It's too harsh a word. But he's not
I still had my
expansive enough.
students read. I still had my students reading it. Don't tell
I
me.
still have a copy.
Okay.
It's the things that break out of the mold that make Gollum interesting. It's the things that make Gollum weird and strange that make him very interesting. And that means that he has to have the ability to do wrong things. Sam doesn't do that.
Right. Well,
Even when he has the ring, he's tempted for a moment and he goes, no, not me.
I would be so bad at this.
And so there's nothing to grasp onto. It makes him one-dimensional. And this is true of plenty of heroes throughout all of our media, all of our narratives. Heroes get boring.
Well, and this is, I'm just going back to this, bad guys are interesting, I mean, there's many, I mean, bad girls, bad guys, they're more complicated, they're more complex. I mean, actors probably enjoy playing villains more than good guys, because in some ways, villains are actually, I'm going out on a limb here, villains are easier to write because most of us are villains.
So Alan Rickman, who, from all of the things he's ever done, apparently when he had put out, the Robin Hood film, and he's the sheriff of Nottingham, one of his nieces or nephews says, how come you always play villains? And he very, very calmly said, I play very interesting people.
Yes.
And so because this is interesting to do, this is interesting to play, whereas the heroes, what are you going to do with
I mean, I think most of us imagine ourselves as heroes, but most of us really have some villain in us too, because we're all fallen, right? I mean, and that's kind of, and I think Gollum is the most fallen of all of us, right? He is the person. I mean, if you, I would love to hear Gollum's testimony. Hello, my name is Gollum, and I have borne the ring for 2,000 years, right? Welcome, Gollum.
Yeah, and to say this is what my life has been.
This is what my life has been, and when you think, what witnessing is you want to talk about just how far down in that pit you were when God redeemed you.
Yeah.
Right, and Gollum coming out of that pit. This is, and we're going to see in this text, and we'll get to it in a moment. That moment where Gollum can step across. You can see it. He can see salvation from here, if you will. And it just sort of falls apart just a little bit.
Just
So,
shy of the finish line.
yeah, we've touched on some differences and some similarities, but I think that the crucial difference, and we've talked about love and possession, and the fact that for Gollum, if not for Smeagol, but for Gollum, everything is an exchange. And so the more Gollum serves, the more Gollum loves, the more divided he becomes.
Yes.
Whereas the opposite for Sam, right? For Sam, he's got nothing to draw him away from his devotion to Frodo. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about some of the problem with that.
But the more Sam serves, the more Sam loves, and that's just the reality of Sam.
Yes, and I think it's a little dysfunctional on occasion, but we can talk about that. But I think one of the distinctions, I mean, our theme is servanthood, but it strikes me that you could talk about Sam in terms of servanthood. I mean, he chooses to bear Frodo's burdens,
Yes.
right? He chooses to help Frodo bear the ring. And he ultimately chooses that when he believes Frodo is dead, that he will go on without Frodo, even though he doesn't believe that he can.
Yeah.
And so that's a kind of servanthood. Whereas Gollum is, the whole thing is a scheme, right? And you can think of he's servile, right? It's servitude, not servanthood, right? That what he is doing, Gollum, not Smeagol. That Gollum is this is transactional for him. There's no self-giving. Right, there's only self-wanting. It's sort of like classical theological understanding. The will turned in on itself.
Yes, and there's parallels again with a lot of text. We go back to the Palantir, where the chapter of the Palantir, where Grima Wormtug, who was the servant of Saruman, shows up back in the tower, and he is, I'll do whatever you tell me to. I'll do whatever you want me to do, and he is this servile creature until things get too bad, and that's the end of the book, and we won't worry about that yet because it's a big spoiler, but. There is this moment where that entire servile nature turns back around and becomes vicious.
Warped.
Warped.
Right, and that's that duplicity, right? Duplicity as the opposite of integrity, right? That Smeagol is talking out, Gollum and Smeagol talk out of two sides of their mouths because they are literally two people. But the interesting thing, and you've alluded to this already, right, is that in some ways they're mirrors of each other. And Tolkien talked about that, and I think that offers perhaps some interesting insights, and that's what we'll turn to when we get to the next video.